I now like to call up Vice President of Engineering Operations George Feltz from Southside Electric, but first he will be following Regional Policy Director James Beasley from Dominion Energy. And again, we do this annual update of our energy companies that are serving the citizens of Chesterfield. Sometimes we've done it during hurricane season, and sometimes we've done it at the beginning of the winter season, where the coldest, darkest days put probably the most pressures upon either system. And I think most people are aware that Southside Electric derives its power, I believe, entirely from the Dominion Energy production facilities. Mr. Beasley.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Supervisors, Dr. Casey, I'm James Beasley again with Dominion Energy. This is my 8th year presenting, and I'm thrilled to be here with everyone tonight to talk about a little snapshot of what we're doing within your county. I'm filling in for Sarah Marshall. She's out and couldn't make it here tonight. Behind me in the audience is Emil Avram, Vice President of Business Development. His group is in charge for generation projects that we are planning to put online, which can include fossil, renewables, and battery projects, small modular reactors. So he is going to be coming up here after I kind of go through halfway of the presentation. Also in the audience, who I think you have met before, is Shane Young. Shane is the station director at Chesterfield Power Station. So just a little snapshot of what we are in Virginia, and we feel that we are very much a part of the fabric of the Commonwealth of Virginia. And we have a mission, we have a saying, it's a mission. If we can't complete our mission every day, you can't complete your mission. And you can't do it, and your county services can't complete the mission if we don't provide reliable, affordable, and increasingly clean energy to customers that are powering your everyday. And we take that charge very seriously. And you're going to hear themes of reliability, affordability, and increasingly clean energy throughout this presentation. So those 3 items I just wanted to underscore with you tonight. At the micro level at Chesterfield County, we have roughly about 161,000 customers. We serve about 2/3 of the county. I believe my Southside Electric Cooperative folks would back me up that they have the other third. When I first came here to the county 8 years ago, you had roughly about 145,000 customers. So you've grown quite a bit. And customers, we equate that as a meter on your house. So there's a lot more folks behind that meter as well. 6 major assets throughout the county. Our credit union headquarters is located in the county. We have our operations centers that operate, and training centers that are located near Dutch Gap for our generation folks, and then also our distribution teams. And then we have some other generation assets that Emil will cover later in the presentation. This is a very busy slide, and I apologize.
Real quick.
Yes, sir.
Customers can also be commercial customers
Yes,
as
sir.
well, right?
Yes.
It's any place there's a meter is a customer.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that clarification. Thank you. I'm sorry for this slide being so busy, but just takeaway is we are all the umbrella of Dominion Energy Virginia is our generation transmission grid, which is first in class in the whole nation of really making sure we have a robust transmission grid that makes sure our reliability is about 99%, and then also our distribution grid. And that's all bundled under Dominion Energy Virginia, which is all regulated the Virginia State Corporation Commission. I wanted to highlight economic development because we work with you and your authority and making sure, and also the state, and making sure that we're looking to retain businesses and also attract businesses. And energy is an important factor on that. And economic development folks will tell you that people look at pricing, reliability, and then also renewable pieces of it. And we are at those conversations to make sure we are highlighting what we're doing here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and then also making sure that we're keeping businesses here and also attracting new businesses into our state and county. We do that by rates, and we're at 18% below the national average. We want to keep ourselves below the average. And we want to make sure that our customers are getting the best value on that. And that's how our rates are super low. And we're very proud of that. Also, our industrial rates. So that goes to the heart of the economic development piece, where we're competing not only with North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, but those rates play an important piece of that. And to make sure that we're 20% below the national average, that's something, again, we strive to make sure we're doing. Chesterfield Power Station just celebrated its 79th year, and we're very proud of that. It celebrated midsummer, and about 3 years ago, we retired the old units 3 and 4, which were coal units, and then in the springtime of this year, we've just retired 5 and 6. We still operate units 7 and 8, which is a natural gas, units. I just wanted to underscore how important this power station is to the county, to the region, and to our service fleet. Not only it's the oldest we have in operation, it has all the infrastructure here. And Emil will go into that later in the presentation. But you have the distribution network, but you also have the transmission network, and you also have natural gas there. You also have an opportunity if you need to expand, which Emil will go into later. And then also how this plant was operating, and Emil has a slide on this, and I don't want to steal too much of his thunder, on Winter Storm Elliott back in 2022. The grid was, capacity was up. Everyone was scrambling for power. This power station and every single power station in the Dominion Energy fleet was operating at 100% capacity. And Shane and his folks didn't have a holiday. They were working from the 23rd all the way through the 28th, 29th, making sure that the power station was operating at 100%. And so kudos to Shane and making sure that, and his folks were making sure that we all had power and we were warm at our homes. Also at the Chesterfield Power Station is our coal ash cleanup efforts. And just a couple of days ago, we filed for a modification of our solid waste permit. I'm glad I'm here to talk about that, just to kind of go in and explain what we're doing. And really, we are trying to match up our movement of coal ash from the former ponds. They were the lower and upper ash ponds. They've been dewatered. We're looking to move that coal ash up to the Raymond landfill, which is on Dominion Energy property north of Coxendale Road. It's to the west of the power station on our own property. We're looking to move that, and we need to meet a deadline set forth by the federal government of first quarter 2034. And to do that, we want to match up our permit that we have, or our which has been put in by the MOU and the transportation plan that we filed 3 years ago. I would like to just highlight your leadership on the MOU and the transportation plan, and your staff's leadership. These rules were put forth in the federal government. Some folks at the state General Assembly decided they wanted to add on to those requirements at the federal level, and we had to move that coal ash. And if you have to move that coal ash, we're going to be impacting Coxendale Road. And you took the forward thinking and thinking, hey, if we're going to have to get on the roads, we need new access points. And that's what that MOU was, and the transportation plan was, is to make sure that we were not impacting your citizens when we start really doing the heavy lift of moving all that 15 million cubic yards either to the landfill, and that's set forth at 9 million cubic yards, or to the rail handling area, which the rest of that delta, 6 million cubic yards, will be shipped off for beneficial reuse. So we have applied for a modification on our solid waste permit, and that is going to be increasing from 7,500 tons to about 15,000 tons. That's the maximum. That's not what we're probably going to run full bore, and we're going to ramp up to that. It's our hope, too, by the time we start getting full bore and ramping up, that the new access points to Henricus, the new boat ramp, and then the trails access south into the Dutch Gap Conservation Area will be open. I just also want to pause real quick and talk about how we've been coexisting right now, moving coal ash right now with Henricus and the boat ramp, particularly. Shane and his team and our coal ash team have done a phenomenal job working with not only the neighbors, but also stakeholders. Last summer, there was a fishing tournament that was going to be utilizing the Dutch Gap ramp. And we were doing road work and blocking some of the road during certain hours. And we knew that that was going to be a problem to boaters that would like to start off their fishing at 3:30 in the morning. So what Shane and the coal ash team did was they escorted boats through our property, through the power station block property to the boat ramp. And it went off really well. But those are the types of actions that we work with your citizens and stakeholders that it doesn't get to the county as complaints or concerns. We're addressing it, and we're doing a really good job being a good neighbor at that location. Also on our modified permit, it's a redundant leachate pump. We have a liner demonstration. We're not putting in new liners. We're not changing the new liner specs. All we're doing is we want to make sure it is what we think it's designed to do, and we're going to do a demonstration on that front. For that, in that liner, it means at the Raymond Road, or excuse me, the Raymond landfill area where we're putting the coal ash. And then we also, working with DEQ, they wanted us to put a backup well area to make sure that we are looking at testing of any contaminants in areas and making sure everything is safe. Again, Dutch Gap facilities will still continue to be open, and we're proud of our relationship at that site. I didn't have a slide, and I apologize, on our restoration work, but please know that when there is a storm, we want to get the lights on as quick as possible, and we want to make sure that we're getting your critical infrastructures back up, and we want to make sure the communication towers are working in your county so your fire department and police department can get the messages from your dispatchers. That goes hand in hand also with our grid reliability and hardening system that we're doing here in the county. The county was actually one of the first pilot areas that we looked for strategic underground. Strategic underground means the worst performing lines are constantly going out. We're constantly going out to repair it. Let's try to get those lines underground. And we wanted to make sure before we started going out and seeing if it really did work, we wanted a pilot area. And we piloted right here in Chesterfield off of Hall Street Road. And we may say, you may say, like, just bury them underground and it's not that hard. Well, you have to get easements. You have to figure out where you're going to put the transformers. You have to also make sure where you get the service lines going into the house. So we wanted to make sure we got it right. We got it right here in Chesterfield. Y'all were the first. Also, we're looking at making the grid smarter, smart meters, tailoring the voltage. Those smart meters will be able to tailor the voltage so we are making sure we're sending the direct amount of voltage to the houses. That's particularly important for conservation angles. We're also smartening the grid to make sure substations communicate with the distribution grid. When there are power outages, you get automatically switched to a different circuit. It's done automatic. Those are the types of investments that we are making sure that we're increasing and maintaining our reliability. So with that, I really appreciate my portion. I'm going to turn it over to Emil Abram.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thanks for having us here. I am going to talk a little bit about the infrastructure that we are planning and completing in that entire range or spectrum. But first, wanted to talk just a few moments about our recent integrated resource plan, which now we've, the Mid-Atlantic regional grid operator recognized the increased demand for electricity in our territory or in our zone. We now expect to see a 5% annual growth rate in our summer peak load, year after year through 2038. That requires unprecedented growth in our power generation fleet over the next several years. And the modeling that we completed suggests that we need an all-of-the-above approach that includes certainly a lot of renewable energy in the form of solar and wind power, but also energy storage. We are exploring new nuclear as well. And also, we need to sprinkle in some new fossil fuel generation to ensure and maintain that reliability. And, I want to pause there because I think it's important to recognize the men and women in our company recognize the duty that we have to ensure reliable electric service 24/7, 365. So I think my colleague, Mr. Beasley, mentioned this Winter Storm Elliott, which came through almost a year ago now during Christmas Eve timeframe. We saw a record peak demand. Our colleagues adjacent to us in North Carolina and Tennessee from this event experienced rolling blackouts during that event. It brought in a severe winter cold front, and we experienced, low single-digit temperatures here in Virginia throughout our territory. And during the peak point where we experienced the maximum load our record peak load, I show here a chart which indicates what our production was in total output by fuel or technology. And you can see it was largely nuclear, natural gas, coal-fired generation, oil-fired generation, and then purchased power from the wholesale power market. We do have close to 2,000 megawatts of solar in operation, but at that time at 7 a.m. Right at the winter solstice, essentially, it was dark, and you can see that small sliver called non-dispatchable generation, which produced about 0.06% of the generation during that peak period. So it further emphasized the need to ensure that we maintain what we call dispatchable generation, where we can turn it on or off when we need it the most. And please ask any questions along the way. I think you may be aware we are planning what we're calling the Chesterfield Energy Reliability Center. And we will likely bring that to you, the county, for a conditional use permit application next year. This is a 1,000 megawatt combustion turbine facility consisting of four turbines. It will be a state-of-the-art technology that we will bring with the significant environmental controls in place. And again, while we continue to deploy large amounts of solar, wind, and clean energy, approximately 95% of what we plan to build over the next 25 years will be zero carbon generation, but we need some additional natural gas generation to ensure reliable service over that time frame. It will have two different fuels that it could operate on and potentially operate on hydrogen in the future. It's estimated to bring, obviously, tax revenues and jobs to the facility and the region. We are also expanding significantly our solar generation in Virginia. We have almost 10,000 megawatts in operation or development. A large part of that is in development. You can see that's the green bar. The blue bars I mentioned, we have about 2,000 megawatts in operation today. Here in Chesterfield County, we plan to start the Winter Park solar facility early next year. That's a 20 megawatt facility. I'll talk about that in a moment. But we continue to bring solar projects to our regulator, the Virginia SCC, annually on the order of 500 to 1,000 megawatts per year. And we probably have, close to, between a dozen or 2 dozen projects under construction today across the Commonwealth. All right, I mentioned Winterpock, about 10 miles due west of here on River Road. We have plans to build a 20 megawatt facility. It's a ground-mounted tracker system that will be built, and we expect to start construction early next year and it will be in operation next year as well. It's a fairly short construction period for this facility. So this just shows a pictorial of how the progression of construction occurs. First, site preparation, grading, tree clearing, et cetera, applying environmental controls, double silt fence around wetlands, sensitive areas, and stormwater ponds. These do require large amounts of land, and on some of our solar facilities that we construct, they might have 100 or more stormwater ponds constructed during that process. Then you begin the solar facility installation and certainly get into grid connection, commissioning, and ultimately commercial operation. We are also pioneering some new battery technologies. We have one of the largest energy storage mandates in the nation at 2.7 gigawatts as part of the Virginia Clean Economy Act. These will play an increasingly important role in our system for electric reliability. And in fact, we own and operate with our partner the largest energy storage facility in the U.S. today. Our Bath County pumped hydro facility acts as a energy storage asset. And we're also deploying a number of new technologies at various locations, Virginia State University, and we are deploying something, another technology in Henrico County as well, not too far from here. Just in the last few weeks, we now have our largest energy storage facility called Dry Bridge in operation right here in Chesterfield County. Just went into service at the end of November. Like I said, it's our largest today. We have one other that's under construction at Dulles Airport, which is coupled with a 100 megawatt solar facility. So you'll have the claim to fame of having our largest battery facility probably for the next couple of years. And we're excited about this. There are going to be a lot of circumstances. We're going to learn how to use this asset during certain weather events, during peak periods of energy demand from our customers. We'll be able to shift load to different times of day using this asset. So it's something, again, targeted at energy reliability. I talked a little bit about the Virginia State University Battery Storage Partnership. We announced something just recently in the last month, a 1.5 megawatt battery that can discharge for 10 hours, located on campus using a new metal hydrogen technology. And it will be used as a teaching tool as well on campus. Certainly the Coastal Virginia Offshore Wind Project is extremely important to us. This is the largest offshore wind project planned in the U.S. We expect to start construction next year and complete it in 2026. When it's done, it will produce enough power for about over 600,000 homes and businesses when it operates at peak output. We expect to have final federal approval and issuance of the permit from the Department of Interior by the end of January, early February timeframe. We're also obviously a nuclear operator. We have 4 reactors at 2 sites. At North Anna and Surrey Power Station. Surrey just celebrated its 50 years of operation. That's just under 2,000 megawatts of generation. We have extended the life of that asset. We're actually the only license holder in the United States from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission that now has approval to operate a nuclear facility up to 80 years, which that facility will operate. We're also exploring small modular reactors, new nuclear technology that brings with it smaller footprint, more, I would say, opportunity around schedule and cost risk improvements. And in our IRP, our Integrated Resource Plan, we found the need that with all of the load growth that we have, we're going to need to deploy anywhere from 1,600 to 4,800 megawatts of new nuclear. And we're looking actually at sites today around the Commonwealth and exploring the technologies that are coming to market. We're also looking at hydrogen as a resource for the future. That's a zero carbon gas that can also supplement and be blended with natural gas to help us reduce our carbon emissions in the future. To round it out, we have a number of energy efficiency programs in place today. These really provide opportunities for customers that voluntarily decide to participate to reduce energy demand, especially during peak periods. And we've had some success with that in the past. So in summary, as my colleague Mr. Beasley mentioned, we are seeking to maintain affordable, reliable, and now ever increasingly clean electricity to our customers, and certainly giving back to the communities we serve, where we all also live, work, and play. Any questions?
Board members.
I have one, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Wendell.
My understanding on the, and thank you for being here.
Sure.
My understanding on the gas turbine peaker plant is that occasionally there will be the need to have to cold start it if there's a reason that it won't fire up, that there's some hydrocarbons that are usually set aside in the form of gasoline or fuel of some kind, or traditional fuel to get it going. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so one of the things that I was thinking about in the context of how politicized energy has gotten in this country is there a way to, because I'm assuming, and by the way, and let me just make sure this is not an assumption, but I'm assuming that if that fuel is not used, it would have to be disposed of and new fuel brought in after a period of time. Is that right?
Actually, no.
No,
We don't
okay.
expect to have any issues with that. We operate on distillate fuel oil, many other facilities across the state, and we don't expect to have that issue. We periodically test the fuel, make sure that it's in good condition for operating in the gas turbines. The technology is very particular about what type of fuel and exactly what purity that it's in, and so we ensure that and make sure that the equipment operates long term in the best condition possible.
And let me just ask finally, have alternatives to that fire up method been explored, and is there any work being done in that sort of area? If someone was looking at this, trying to forge a compromise on how we get to cleaner energy over time, is that something that you all have looked at?
We explore all technologies across the spectrum, including emerging technologies coming to market, many of which are still in their, I'll call it, low technology readiness levels, right? There's still, I'll call it, two guys or two gals in a garage exploring new technologies. We do a lot of due diligence on those technologies across the spectrum. This is a proven technology. It's been around for many decades. And in our planning process, we actually include a full menu of technologies across that spectrum. Renewables, nuclear, fossil. We look at hydrogen. We look at energy storage. In some cases, multiple technologies within a category. Certainly, like for example, in the gas-fired generation space, you can have what's called simple cycle peaker facilities like this one that we're proposing, or combined cycle where you add a steam turbine which captures the waste heat coming out of the exhaust, and it adds more power generation capability and increases the efficiency. So we look at a broad spectrum. We run many cases in our integrated resource plan, and certainly we are very focused on doing everything we can to reduce our carbon emissions. And we've done quite a bit in the last 15 to 20 years. We reduced our carbon emissions by over 40%. A lot of that was done by converting some of our coal facilities and building new natural gas plants, and now, of course, deploying a large amount of renewable power generation. But nuclear continues to be by far the largest zero carbon source here in Virginia. It provides over a third of the electric power for the state and for our customers, and that's why we are looking at that technology as well. We recognize that's another long-term solution. So right now, with the amount that we are deploying with renewables, which are considered intermittent resources, right? Depend on the sun and the wind. We need to add small amounts of fossil fuel generation to really keep that system all together. And it's expected to be used, like I mentioned, only when it's really needed, right? Peak demand periods, severe weather events. So it won't run all the time.
Mr. Engel?
Got a couple questions for you, and then maybe for Shane or James.
Sure.
How many acres of solar would it take to generate 1,000 megawatts?
Somewhere between 5 and 10,000 acres.
5 to 10,000 acres. And if you put in something, how far out do you really think hydrogen is? Is that something that's just a pie in the sky, or is that something that within the time frame of going over to zero emissions is a reality that we could see actually happen?
I think a lot of it will depend on new technologies to produce hydrogen from clean energy. Right now, the main source, or what everybody's looking at, is electrolyzing water through that electrolysis system using clean energy, and then separating the water into hydrogen and oxygen. That process is currently expensive, and it takes a lot of power to do that. So I would say right now,
power to create hydrogen to
Right.
use for power.
correct. So that round trip efficiency is, for this type of facility, you're probably talking about losing 70% of the energy. So I think new technologies will likely come to market in the future. I would say that a lot of work is going on globally to make hydrogen more cost effective and finding other ways to produce it in a clean way. And it's difficult to say when that point will happen, when it becomes economically viable for this facility, but we'll certainly analyze that on a periodic and regular basis.
All right. Are you familiar with the coal ash at all?
Probably
Shane?
talk to my colleague,
Maybe
Mr. Young
Shane
here,
or-
yeah,
James?
or James. Yep.
You mentioned it, and I know you're going to meet the deadlines that you have, or at least that's your plan to meet those deadlines. Are you behind it all right now because we've been slow to get the roads in, or I noticed that you're looking to double the amount of tonnage moved. Is that because we're behind, or is that, what instigated that?
It's getting, that's a great question, Supervisor Engel, Mr. Chairman, if I may. we've always had that ramped up in the transportation plan. It's just getting that up and running. So we're on time, but we do want to have a little, just to make sure if something gets behind, we're able to amp up our work just to make sure we're compliant with our permits. If we have a permit, we abide by our permits. So that's why we want to make sure we just have a little wiggle room. But we are on time. We're going to be announcing a new vendor for the beneficial reuse, which will take that 16 million cubic yards and dispose of it in a beneficial way. And that's going to be with rails. So that is hugely important, and we're getting that. We should be announcing that here very soon.
So there was a slight delay in the recycling because of a change in vendor, but you're going to get that back on track?
We had a little slight hiccup, but that you've got to look at it too. You've got the biggest bulk, about 9 million cubic yards, is going into the Raymond landfill. So we've got a lot of work just on our plate just to do that work. So we're not going to be we're not going to be behind the 8 ball on this.
And how often do you plan to keep the community updated on the status of the coal ash? What's your thought process?
We were already going to do a letter coming up anyway in the end of this month, going into the new year. We do frequent letter updates and then also check in with the citizens as well. So if we need to do additional outreach, we certainly will. But we have been having outreach and engagement. And even before we even started going down this road, during the MOU, even before the MOU or transportation plan, we were having conversations and talking about to the citizens very frequently around that area.
I don't think it's any secret. We plan to be starting the road to Henricus in the very near future. So hopefully we'll be able to get that process moving quickly as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor.
Mr. Chairman, one quick question for one of them, if I may, Mr. Chairman. What's this general status of wind energy generation? I understand this area is really great at that. What's the general status of that wind generation?
For onshore wind,
Offshore wind.
offshore or inshore?
Offshore.
Offshore wind, we had a slide deck on it, the Coastal Virginia Offshore Wind Project. That is going to be bringing 176 turbines, 27 miles off the coast of Virginia. We just got the first shipment of the poles to set forth to put the wind turbines on top. That is on time, on budget, and we are excited to do that. We will have that by the end of 2026, sir. But construction has already started.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I realize that it is hot off the presses, and I'm not sure who I'm asking this question to.
Sorry, sir.
Thank you. So I know it's hot off the presses as of today with the Conference of Parties. It's their 28th meeting in Dubai that happened today, and I'm noticing that as of today, so I recognize that it's saying at the conference, the COP28, nations agree to transition away from fossil fuels and reach world net zero carbon emissions by 2050. It is saying that nearly 200 countries agreed Wednesday to move away from planet-warming fossil fuels. The first time they've made a crucial pledge in decades of UN climate talks through, though many even warned that the deal still has significant shortcomings. The agreement, I'm just going to finish this, it was approved without a floor fight, which is what many people feared. And is stronger than the draft it floated earlier in the week that angered some nations. But it didn't call for the outright phasing out of oil, gas, coal, and it gives nations significant wiggle room in their transition away from those fuels. Now, I recognize there's wiggle room here, and it continues to be. My question is around what that wiggle room looks like, and I kind of want to illustrate it for you if I could. If you can see here, all I did was, this is zero emissions, and this is when we have a problem. But another way of looking at it is that this is when we have zero power. This is when we are getting to the point where we're getting into trouble and we have to fire up that peaker plant, okay? Now, here's my question for you, in that with data centers coming on, which Dominion spent a lot of time talking about and all those things, here's my fear. My fear is that the reason for the peaker plant might be that maybe we're typically here, we add a couple data centers, we add a couple more data centers, some happen in the north and then in Northern Virginia, and then the step up to have where we need them when it snows or it got cold with Elliott and those kind of things, it ends up being a lot closer. So I'm curious to know, with the wiggle room, with all of those kind of things, I guess my concern is, and have you all thought about how to keep the diversity there in place so that we don't have to fire up that peaker plant often? So I'm curious to know, we may originally say, hey, we're only going to fire this puppy up once or twice a year if we need it. But we're so close there anyway that we're going to need it more often. So I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on that.
I'm going to, yeah, I am real quick, and I'll turn it over to Emil to get the last piece. On the first piece, I just want to say, and that's a great question, Mr. Chairman, to Supervisor Miller, that what you just described was what the Commonwealth of Virginia has already taken upon itself, which is the Clean Economy Act, which was passed in 2020, that mandated that state utilities, especially Dominion in our case, try to get net zero in 2045. APCO, I think it's 2050, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have the code on APCO piece, but for Dominion, it's 2045. It does have provisions in there for reliability, which you just spoke about. I just want to reiterate, since you brought it up, that last week at the Commission of Electric Utility Regulation, which we were presenting on, just a general update, Ed Bain, the president of the utility, was asked by the author of the Clean Economy Act on the House version, Delegate Rip Sullivan. And he said, is Dominion planning to meet the requirements of the Clean Economy Act? Ed Bain, with 2 words, said, yes, sir. Delegate Sullivan followed up and says, is your expectation you can do so? And Ed Bain said, yes, sir. So with that, we are all locked in on the Clean Economy Act. Emil's going to talk about just that reliability piece, which is in the Clean Economy Act, and how that relates to what our clean goals are with making sure people have power. Emil?
Absolutely. Great question. I think I'll just talk a little bit about how the various technologies come to play and work on a daily basis with one another. And so, typical nuclear power generation on all the time, right? Very much aligned with how data centers operate, right? They're generally on all the time, right? So there's a strong correlation there between nuclear power generation and data center demand. And that's why we're looking at additional nuclear power generation facilities. We think that's important to maintain exactly what you're talking about, to ensure that what we call this facility, in times of extreme demand or extreme weather events, that's really essentially the only time it needs to operate, right? And doesn't become what we call base load generation facility. And so we are looking at those technologies that match or correlate very strongly with data center demand and their power consumption needs 24/7. There are also new nuclear technologies coming to market. I won't get into the details, but traditional nuclear requires several hours to ramp up and down. There are new technologies coming to market that can ramp up and down in minutes, which is very exciting opportunity. If they're cost effective, that could potentially in the future replace something like this. But those are still in their development stage from a technology development. None have been deployed in the US commercially yet. We could see the first ones deployed next decade. And if successful, we'll give serious consideration to those new technologies. So that's something in the future that could replace some of this fossil generation in the future. Energy storage technologies, I think, also could be a promise. Today, lithium ion is predominantly used for that in most power generation technologies. Same thing you have in your iPhone or your laptop. But other chemistries are coming to market that could be cheaper and be optimized to operate and discharge their energy over much longer periods of time. So lithium ion is typically optimized for power generation to be discharged in about 4 hours, right? Which is not enough for events like Winter Storm Elliott. But technologies coming to market that could discharge over 100 hours or 20 days. Those are absolutely going to be important and could potentially displace some of the need for additional fossil fuels. So we're looking at all those technologies. We have a pilot project that has a 100-hour discharge duration that we're planning here to build and have completed in 2026. But these are still nascent technologies. In fact, that company that is still building their factory in Weirton, West Virginia today, and won't have it operational for another year or so. So, we're following and tracking the technologies that are available out there, and we'll do everything we can to reduce our carbon footprint.
Would you agree that it is Dominion's goal to no longer use fossil fuels in the generation of energy?
So we have already committed to net zero carbon emissions as a company broadly by 2050. Yes, sir.
Okay, so you would say, yeah, that is the goal.
That's the goal.
Is to do this quickly. I will be so proud of Dominion if you came to us within the next 6 months and said, that peaker plant we were thinking about, we came up with another idea. We're not going to need it.
I understand.
Because we want to find ways where we don't have to worry about pollution any longer. I think that the Bermuda District will be deeply affected with those folks that are living over there, especially what Mr. Winslow is referring to with regard to having to fire up the plant. But I would be so proud of Dominion if you said, oh, never mind, we got it covered. That would say a lot about who the company is and your ability to find other ways to protect the climate, which is what the Conference of Parties ultimately is attempting to do.
Understood.
Thank you.
Appreciate the comment. I think we'll certainly do everything we can in the future. I think the technology that's available to us today, there's limited opportunities, but I certainly appreciate your feedback. Thank you.
Ms. Engel.
What is the typical life cycle of a peaker plant?
Somewhere between 35 and 45 years.
And we would finish, if there was one built in Chesterfield and it followed all the permitting process, everything else, it would finish approximately what year?
Late 28.
So your normal depreciation cycle, I guess, for that facility would be take you to 2058?
That's at least that normal depreciation. It would be beyond that, probably
So,
closer to the 2060s.
Just so I understand, if you're trying to go to zero by 2050 and you still have them in place, is that something that's the exception to the rule that Dr. Miller was talking about? Or I'm just trying to figure out
Right.
if, when regulators look at it, if they amortize it over the normal life cycle, or if they would amortize it to the 2050 timeframe to try to meet that goal, and what that cost would look like to the citizens.
Sure. So we haven't made any decisions yet on what life cycle to assume. We expect to apply for a construction and operating permit with the Virginia SEC in about a year and a half, at which time we'll certainly have a plan. But it is something we will look at and evaluate. and decide whether we use the traditional life cycle depreciation schedule or something shorter. I would say that until we have other technologies come to market that are viable, that can replace it, you know, I won't speak for our final conclusion, but I could anticipate us using the full life cycle for now, knowing that there could be other fuels that could provide the input to this facility in the
Well, that's
future,
why I was
such as
asking about
hydrogen.
hydrogen earlier.
Exactly. So I think, you know, that could be an opportunity to transition this asset to a zero carbon technology if the fuel costs and the, you know, round trip power loss going from power to hydrogen back to power is efficient. So that's something we will absolutely explore.
Thank you.
It's a great question. Thank
Dr.
you.
Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Engel is touching on something that I think is really interesting. Do you have a sense of how much it would cost to build the peaker plant?
We're still in the process of developing that cost, so we're not quite ready to provide that information. We'll certainly have that when we go before the Virginia State Corporation Commission seeking a construction and operating permit and a rider to rates. But at this time, we don't have a number that we're able to disclose.
Do you have a range?
I do not. I'd love to give a range, but I don't want, you know, we want to be accurate when we disclose that to the public, and at this time, we're not ready to do that.
How long have you been thinking about the building of a peaker plant?
We've been exploring this since probably 2018. We stopped development for some time and then recently restarted it in the past year or so.
And I completely understand things change over time as far as costs are concerned. But did you have a sense of what it would cost even into 2018?
We had not gone through the full construction RFP process, which is a large part of the cost of the facility. So at that time, we may have had an idea, but I'm not sure we disclosed it at that time. But you know, it's given where costs are, and you know, coming out of COVID with inflation of materials and raw commodities and so forth, we could expect it to be higher than what it was projected back then.
So it's entirely possible, kind of what Mr. Engel is intimating to, is you may come up and when you finally derive those numbers and say, it doesn't make sense. Is that possible?
So this facility will be important for electric reliability, right? And so what price do you put on that? And I think that's the question that we will be posing. We will have some scenarios that will look at the grid of the future in 2030, 2040, 2050, that will show why this facility is needed. Because, like I said, we have a duty to provide reliable electric service. If that is not here when it's needed, and you have blackouts, and homes and businesses and schools and county government facilities and churches and hospitals are all affected, the impact to the economy is massive. And we do not want that to happen. Every day our men and women work to ensure not only the safe operation of our facilities, but to ensure electric service is near 100%. You all expect that, the citizens expect that, and we expect that of ourselves. And that, it's a very difficult thing to price, right? So that's something that we have to consider in evaluating this facility.
Right. I mean, I recognize that we're going to end up, I am hoping that what I'm suggesting is that ultimately you're not going to bring it to us, that you're going to have come up with a solution and will not need to come to us. And at that moment, again, I'll feel very, very proud. But I can't help it. I'm trained as a psychologist, and I am also certified as a substance abuse counselor. So what I'm recognizing is that the substance here is fossil fuel, and we're addicted to fossil fuel. But I also recognize that fear is a very effective tool for manipulation. So what I'm suggesting to you is if you're not giving me a cost of what it's going to even cost, and we don't even know that number yet, but
No,
you're
we will,
saying,
but we will.
but you're saying that we can't put a price on reliability, I would suggest we can, and we should. By that I mean that we have the reliability of what will happen with solar and batteries and all these different fuels. But I'm hoping that it just won't make sense financially to build it. It'll just be bad business. That's not about reliability. That's about, because we are going to be working with a diversification of everything. So I'm suggesting to you that just the sheer fact that there hasn't been a cost even here is suspect. And I'm hoping that what will happen, again, is that we're going to continue to follow what the world is asking us to do, because I see this as a hungry snake eating its own tail, meaning we need this, but yet we are hurting ourselves in the meantime. So I'm hoping that you're going to come up with a solution and make us all proud.
I appreciate that. We'll certainly, you know, if a new technology comes to market that is zero carbon, fully dispatchable, and cost-effective, in the next month or two, we'll certainly consider that. And, you know, in our integrated resource plan, we include and evaluate costs, reliability, and our clean energy progress in that. So it's all embedded in that.
And then bring all the diversification and efficiency and finding ways that we can live within our means.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I might want to say that he mentioned one thing that's so critical, and that's reliability. We certainly expect it. When we turn on the lights, we expect power. So I appreciate that as you articulated earlier. So we thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Great discussion. Moving on to Southside Electric.
All right. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, members of administration, my name is George Phelps. I'm Vice President of Engineering and Operations with Southside Electric Cooperative. My comments tonight are going to be fairly brief, and if we have opportunity to get those slides going here. Conversation is going to be brief tonight, titled here for winter preparation. I have a few other things that I'll throw in, and some of those will definitely support some of the comments you heard from Dominion, obviously one of the utilities that we work very closely with here in the state. So, okay. So just a bit of background about Southside Electric Co-op. We are a member-owned electric cooperative. We serve roughly 58,000 active accounts across our service territory, 18 counties that we service and touch in the Southside Virginia area, 6 towns and 1 city. We serve approximately 8,400 miles of primarily distribution system. So we live within the distribution delivery space. We're not in the generation or generation capacity. We have a very small amount of radio transmission systems that we operate to basically take delivery from American Electric Power or Appalachian Electric Power out in our western territory, and also Dominion Virginia Power here in the central and eastern parts of our service territory. All of our power needs come from our partner cooperative, Old Dominion Electric Cooperative, who we are a member owner of, and then we deliver that energy to our member owners who live in our service territory. We cover that service territory, in which you'll see in the graphic here, that small yellow shaded area in the south central portion of Chesterfield County is basically where our service territory is in this county. Obviously, many other counties across the territory. We have 144 employees that we have stationed at 4 different district locations across our footprint. So we have an office in Dinwiddie, we have an office in Powhatan, one in our crew facility, which is also our headquarters facility, and then out in our Alta Vista area. So from those 4 areas, we cover and serve the territory, distribution delivery to those members. Here in Chesterfield, just under 3,000 active accounts that we service, primarily residential. So maybe one of the takeaways from Dominion versus Southside, we are heavily residential. We serve members homes and their activities there. About 200 miles of our 8,400 miles of distribution system lives inside Chesterfield's boundary. So in that area, we service about 2,200 distribution poles in that footprint out of 128,000 that we serve across our footprint. And there's 2 substations in there. One actually is within Chesterfield's borders, and then one is in Dinwiddie, but serves across Lake Ches and into Chesterfield as a backup for that station. So we came tonight, we wanted to touch a bit on winter prep. Obviously, we're here at the beginnings of winter. We've been seeing and hearing about the various forecasts for what's to come, and it's always a forecast, so we don't know. I wish we did, but we don't. So we plan for winter storms much the same as we do any type of storm in our facility. So whether it's the wind and the snow and the ice, or whether it's the hurricanes, or whether it's the thunderstorm season, we have those threats that happen all throughout the year. So our planning process is very similar to those storms. We do have nuances that we look at based on some of the impacts that are slightly different from them. One of the things that we do and have been doing for years, we maintain an active emergency restoration plan. I'm sure very similar to some of the things and plannings that Chesterfield County does from their emergency services and other services that you all provide. We maintain that plan annually. We exercise it at least once annually. It's usually exercised more often than that based on the variety of different storm events that we see. It's focused in a number of different areas, but primarily what I'll speak to tonight is really our pre-planning, focusing on materials, on our mutual aid, where we're bringing in other support facilities to help in those large outages, and then how we communicate with our local entities. So Chesterfield County being an example, how we communicate to you all prior to and during the storm event. One of the unique things about winter storm prep, and like I said, each type of storm is a bit different, is roads, road access, road in access, and then our off-road conditions, where we live a lot with our distribution system. Is not on the hard surface roads, it's in the off-road areas. So the first thing I'll touch on here from a material stock standpoint, we maintain, as I said, those 4 district offices. Each one of those offices has its own material warehouse that we maintain a variety of different parts and pieces that we use to keep the distribution system intact and recovered from an event. As of today, living on each of those 4 lots, we have about just under 500 distribution poles that live in our racks on those sites that our line personnel can pick up and use at any time. We have another close to 1,450 power transformers. So the transformers that service load to each of our member owners, we have all varieties of those. We keep those stocks in those levels. We can increase those levels on the spur of a moment if we see some of those larger events coming. We have relationships with a number of pole vendors that keep us stocked fairly quickly. Within 24 hours, 48 hours, we've got those deliveries coming in to supplement those other deliveries. We're a member of co-op. So we pride ourselves being a co-op business, and we look for other co-ops who can support us. So Tar Heel Electric Membership Cooperative down in Raleigh, North Carolina. They're a material supply cooperative. They serve material supplies to co-ops up and down the East Coast. We're one of their members. We receive a significant amount of our materials through that relationship. We have a number of other vendor relationships that we leverage across our needs. And again, for the last several years, obviously since COVID impacted us and the disruptions we've all seen in the material supply, or in the supply chain, if you will, we continue to stay focused on that, having a little higher inventories in our local offices, a little better relationships that we're looking for to make sure we have the things we need. Our equipment is essential to what we do. So our personnel are the most important asset that we have. In order to get those personnel to where we need them, we've got to have something for them to drive. So our equipment is very important. We have 110 pieces of on-road equipment. We have about another 50 pieces of off-road equipment that we use throughout a restoration. Those assets are maintained by our internal cooperative personnel. In addition to that, we have a whole bevy of other vendors that help us with that activity. All of our equipment's four-wheel drive capable, so all of it's set up for off-road operation, recovery units and things that go along with those pieces of equipment. We have specialty equipment in-house on tracks and other things that we can get into those areas. We have a whole list of other vendors who can help us bring more of that equipment into bear as we need those things. Mutual aid, as I said, people being the most important thing that we have and the most important asset. Well, in those large events, one of the things that we leverage, just as Dominion or AEP would leverage, are our relationships outside of our cooperative who can come in at a moment's notice and help us recover. So we're a member of the Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware Association of Electric Co-ops, one of our trade associations. Through that partnership, there are 15 other member co-ops within that group. So when we see a storm coming and we begin to prepare for one of those storms, we reach out quickly to the VMDAC, and they begin a process where they can reach out to states up and down the East Coast and as far west as they need to go, literally across the Mississippi and out into the Midwest. And they begin to bring the resources that we request through those opportunities to us. We do that routinely, and the vice versa of that. We also prepare our crews and send our crews when needed, so that two-way path. We also, in addition to those resources, we have a number of different vendors that we deal with from electrical contract construction, and we're constantly using and pulling those resources in as needed as well. So as I put this together, one of the things that does come up is how both the county and the cooperatives and the utilities, the Dominions, the AEPs, we're all preparing for and planning for these events when they're coming. We see them coming, we begin to plan and prepare for them. So a few things that I thought of that are really critical for both of our successes: road accesses and road closures. We work closely with VDOT, looking for those opportunities. Obviously, a lot of our crews are some of the first to respond. They're out even before the first responders are out in many cases, trying to clear the roads to gain access to restore power. So looking for those opportunities where we can work together, having that good communication pre-storm and during storm where we're running into cases where there is issue. Things for the county that I know you all have in your emergency plan, but also using us and making sure we're aware of those changes for shelters, things where those events happen that you need to house citizens, and making sure we're aware of those so we can try to tailor to get those resources back in place. Water supply, we do serve one of your water supply stations down on River Road, so that's a critical item we have noted in our system. We want to make sure that there's open two-way communications with our personnel. So our member engagement group is reaching out to the counties much ahead of those storms that we see coming, even if it's one that we don't see and it's more of a spur of the moment. We're still reaching out, making sure we have good communication established. Just as we operate our emergency plans and you all do those things, as you begin to exercise those plans in a given year, please remember that we are here, and if you need things from us, we're more than willing to be involved in those plans and provide you information during those planning processes. Quite a bit of conversation here, and I'll wrap this up with my last slide, but quite a bit of conversation with Dominion just before me about the impacts from Winter Storm Elliott last Christmas. So we were very focused during that storm with what was going on from the weather perspective, the damage it had caused in the area we service and the restorations we had going on. In the back of our minds were the other things that were going on that luckily did not come to fruition for the state of Virginia. It did happen in North Carolina, it happened in Tennessee, but those rolling blackouts where we were seeing situations where the available capacity on the PJM generation and transmission system was basically unable to service a load based on the type of weather event that was happening there. So we live in the footprint or in the space that's not directly involved with the generation portion of what we do. We're more the distribution side. So we are heavily reliant on the decisions that are made to provide that generation so that we can then bring that to the membership. So I will just add or offer from the county's perspective, as you all are planning for your emergency planning operations, you should probably be thinking about the impacts of a blackout situation. If that doesn't happen, as it did in North Carolina, Tennessee, and in other places, if it does happen, what changes in your operation? How do you react differently to that type of event than, say, a winter storm or a summer storm? I will tell you that there are differences, and they are not the same creature. So think about that. We'd be more than happy to have conversation with you. Obviously, we're already in the process of working with our partners at Dominion and at AEP to help them facilitate plans for restart from a black start. There are certain things that we will have to do to help them in that respect, and we're more than willing to try to accomplish that. Very brief of my comments tonight. again, thank you all for having us here, for having Southside. I'd love to have an opportunity to come back at times during the year and answer other questions and provide other information. But if you have questions of me, I will more than try to answer those.
Board members? I have one question.
Yes, sir.
We actually did have an incident, I think 2 or 3 years ago, during an ice storm here in Chesterfield County, that your company was affected greatly in the southern part of Chesterfield County. And I think people were without power for anywhere from 7 to 9 days. How long would a blackout be compared to an ice storm that took out 50% of your grid?
So from a blackout perspective, one of the things that would be most notable is it probably won't be 50% of the grid. It will be complete blackout. So it could very well encompass the entirety of our system. The speed of recovery is entirely different. It is in a restoration effort, you are trying to repair the system and bring service or source that's available to you back in line. In a blackout position, you're basically trying to balance the available generation as you begin to bring it online with load. It is not about restoring the system, it is about trying to stabilize the generation system first. So it could take hours, it could take days. That's entirely dependent on the situation and how those folks involved with the generation recovery stage that recovery.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep.
All right. Thank you very much. I don't see
Thank
any
you
other
all.
questions. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
We hope that we have no incidents at all.